Thank you, Melissa. I'm actually you're gonna see some strands of my hippie roots in this talk. I don't want us to completely become big business. And in fact, today I'm gonna not talk too much about crowdfunding, but instead, I'm interested in shining a spotlight on one of the major challenges our users face, which is independent creators producing goods outside of the large corporation sort of ecosystem. The challenges they face once they actually hit the market and are trying to reach out to general consumers, not just people that kind of support crowdfunding campaigns, which is a very specific form of sort of early bird adopter and risk taker. So in a grossly oversimplified way, I think we can view the internet's evolution in 3 stages. One of just increasing the amount of connectivity we have to information. It's the spread of just text and images that we saw in the early internet. Connections between individuals increasing, the social internet. And we're now in a stage of increasing people's ability to produce and distribute goods, which is, I think, the most exciting stage. And this is what we might call the independent production economy. And some people have predicted this a while ago. Clay Shirky was one of those people. But I think this is a fascinating time where 3 people can get together in a garage and kind of produce things that were only possible by large corporations previously. And they're producing things like films, music albums, video games, and technology, of course. Pebble, a quick plug here for Pebble 2, which is funding on Kickstarter now, and I think has, in the last 36 hours, raised about $7 million. Just so I'm not only talking about Kickstarter projects, those were all Kickstarter projects that I just browsed through. One of my favorite people producing things that you would think would only be possible by a large corporation is George Holtz, who's taking on autonomous driving on his own and doing so very successfully. But this is like a fascinating time for people's creativity, creative independence, right? The fact that 3 people can get into a garage and decide to create sophisticated, mass-producible consumer and cultural goods is a major shift. And there's an element of this that's kind of a return to the pre-industrialized age. There was a time where most of the goods that people got were made by someone in their hometown, right? The butcher, the blacksmith, the leather maker, the woodworker. Industrialization came along and created these giant factories, giant corporations, mass production, and sort of separated consumers from the people that actually made the things that they consumed. And so we like to think that this system provides an alternative to our traditional model of thinking about how goods are produced and consumed. That model that we've seen over the last century of large corporations, mass production, mass advertising, and mass consumption. Now, for our creators, if you're going to independently create something that is a sophisticated, mass-producible good, you kind of have to replace all the core functions of a large corporation. You have to do so independently. And that means you have to replace what the corporation gives you if you're a small team, which is access to the actual means of production. And that's really what we've seen driving this, right? It's 3D printing, it's easier access to manufacturing supply chains, it's cheap video cameras, it's cheap sensors. That's really what's opened up this economy. It's lower cost of capital and different ways of accessing it. And that's really what crowdfunding has stepped in to do. The other 2 that are actually talked about less are the democratization of the support functions of a large corporation. Like Zenefits is something that does this, right, that allows 3 filmmakers to or 3 inventors to focus on making their product and kind of outsource the support functions of a large corporation. There's actually still a lot of work that needs to be done on building out that infrastructure. And finally, brand and distribution. And that's what I want to talk about today. The thing is, when you're 3 people in a garage, even once you have a product, if you don't have a large brand, how the hell do you find consumers, right? You don't have the Nike symbol to like slap on your product, that megaphone, to get to consumers. And as you have a democratized production economy, you have more and more goods, right, and a more crowded marketplace, and no real mechanism to connect to consumers. This is actually what drives a lot of behavior on Kickstarter, right? The fact that that's so hard once you actually have the product in the marketplace. You see people coming to crowdfunding not really because they need production capital, which is what it was really designed to provide, but to find consumers. And that can actually be pretty risky behavior because the act of funding a crowdfunding campaign is riskier by definition. And so if you are projecting that as just general consumption, people might think that they're just buying something, right? And we try to do a lot of work to make sure that people don't think that. We say that Kickstarter is not a store, and we say that over and over and over again, because people should know that there's risk involved in consuming something through Kickstarter, or crowdfunding in general. But people do engage this behavior a lot because there's not great mechanisms for them once they actually hit the market to find consumers. So I want to talk a little bit today about what we see creators doing in response to this challenge. So the first thing that a lot of people do, and I think this is one that's underappreciated, is just to stay small. Not to worry about growing really, really big and not following the sort of typical internet mythology of getting massive, but to stay small. To really go back to that pre-industrialized age where you're just making a small batch, you know your consumers, they have a small community, and it's really a lifestyle business. And this is what most creators should do probably. And we should champion this and facilitate it more than we do. We usually champion people that get really big and create mass corporations. But I like the little guys and the ones that kind of stay focused on making their product, are in close communication with the people that purchase it, it's meaningful to them, and they're talking to each other. That's a world I want to live in. But for the people that want to grow beyond that, we see some of them just taking that core community that they build up that's small and really leveraging it so that the people become the brand, right? Getting people invested in the success of a brand, getting them to spread the word, building off that, spread the word, build off that. It's a slow build. It's something that crowdfunding is a good first step in. And I think it also is a little bit more human as a path to growing. But it is fairly slow. Another is to form a story that can be shared, and that being the core of really how people hear about a product. That Dragon Cancer is a Kickstarter funded product. But the reason why it gets attention is not really because people know whether or not the product is great, or they know the studio behind the product, or the creators behind the product. It's that the story behind the product is really what's spread. The story behind this product, and this is, I warn you, somewhat depressing, but this is one of my favorite projects ever, is that the video game creator lost his 5-year-old son to cancer. And so he built a video game about that experience. It's a very meaningful personal project. It's the sort of thing that would not get made by a large corporation. But that story spread. That story is immensely shareable. It's something that people want to participate in, regardless of studio, who's the studio, who's the maker. That's just a story that can be told. This is something that we're starting to see more of, building off existing brands. So not having to have your own, but if you can find an existing brand or issue and use that as sort of a replacement for a brand. So this is a reissue of the NASA Standards Manual. It's a graphic manual about NASA's graphic design that was reissued also on Kickstarter. This is what, I just know Kickstarter projects really well. But finding an audience for this isn't, again, this is an independent creator, no publishing house, no big name, but they've managed to get NASA's old standards manual, and reissued that, and they're just basically building off of what's already there. It's kind of a hacky shortcut to building a larger audience. The last two I want to go through are the ones that are more interesting to me, and aren't utilized as much as they should be. First is to build an audience first, and then product second. So Exploding Kittens was a massive Kickstarter project, $8 million for this board game. But the creator behind it, first built up his audience through a webcomic, right? And so if you can first build an audience, because the means of production have been democratized, you can then kind of build whatever you want. You can make a book, you can make a video game, you can make a board game, you can make a gadget. Like, first having your audience through whatever means you can get, whether that's Instagram, YouTube, a webcomic, that may be hard to monetize directly there, and then deciding, like looking at these like democratized means of production and then getting creative. There's not enough people really experimenting with this, right? They think, oh, if I have a YouTube channel, I have to monetize it through YouTube or by making a film. And really, they can do whatever they want, and their audience will follow them there. And the last is something that Medium is doing that I really love. So, and I think this is where there's a huge opportunity, which is curators as brand. Allow people that make things, allow them to make things. Focus on that. Don't focus on marketing, which is probably not their strong suit. And instead, creating an ecosystem or a platform where you can have some people creating, in this Medium's case, writing, and a community of curators. So Medium has just opened up their platform, or restructured their platform, to really pull in magazines like Femsplain. Femsplain goes on Medium, right? They know how to market. They have a brand that they're building. They know how to market. They know how to connect to an audience. That audience pays through Medium for a subscription. And Medium then sits on top of, Femsplain then sits on top of Medium and is able to access and pull all of the content that's being produced on Medium into Femsplain. So they can find what's being made in like this independent, creative marketplace, find the best stuff that fits their brand, pull it in, and then connect it to an audience where like that audience is already sitting there subscribed to Femsplain. That allows creators to just create. It allows people that know how to build a brand and to market to focus on that, and reduces the costs for everyone involved. So I just want to leave you with this, that there's still a ton of infrastructure that we need to build to support independent creators. Making it easier for them to stay small, or providing pathways for them to find a larger consumer base once they have a product, represents an enormous challenge, but also an enormous opportunity. By being deliberate in how we provide pathways for these independent creators, I hope we can find solutions that provide further, like more independence, more creativity, and honestly a healthier relationship between producers of goods and consumers of goods than we saw in the last century. That's it.